Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Paramita and I welcome you once again to my channel. Today in this video lecture, I'll be discussing another chapter of the novel Sons and Lovers. This is chapter 11, which is titled as The Test on Miriam. So I have already completed discussing many chapters of this novel of part 2, and now we are focusing on part 1, and now we are focusing on part 2 of the novel. So today in this lecture I'll be discussing and I'll try to explain, in the simplest terms possible, this chapter, which is titled as The Test on Miriam. So without any further delay, let's get started with the lecture. As far as this chapter is concerned, chapter 11, it is titled as The Test on Miriam. And the title is, of course, very, very significant. Now, the title is significant in the sense that it talks about a test, a trial that Miriam is put to, but at the same time, the test is, it is as much a test of Paul. Because now we find that in this chapter they need to figure out really that whether they are really ready, whether both of them are really prepared, to have or to come together in a complete mutual satisfied relationship or not. So we know that Paul has been having the urge, to be intimate, to be physically intimate with Miriam, but that has not been possible because of Miriam's puritanical background, because of her conservative outlook. Okay, but now in this chapter we find that Paul returns to Miriam once again, and his physical frustration grows to such an extent that he almost seems to be, on his knees to beg before Miriam, to satisfy his desire. Although no such thing is explicitly stated in the chapter, yet we find that Paul's frustration grows to such a level that he is not able to be in peace at all. And then we find that although initially Miriam declines to be, intimate or to come to terms with Paul here, but later she gives in, she agrees, and she promises that she will give in herself to him. And then once what happens, we find that Miriam takes Paul, to her grandmother's cottage, where the cottage is left to herself for a few days. And there they go and they get intimate, they get physically involved, and they physically consummate their love. Now, this physical consummation of their love is important because it shows that although Miriam agrees, to give herself, although she gives herself to Paul, but that is not done spontaneously. Okay, she is somewhere, she feels uncomfortable, and even the words she speaks, like she replies in one word, and that clearly tells readers that she is uncomfortable, that somewhere she takes this union, she takes this physical consummation, she looks upon it as a kind of sacrifice. She feels that she sacrifices her purity for the sake of Paul. And they visit, like I said, they visit Miriam's grandmother's cottage, they physically consummate their love, and even later on also we find that on several occasions Miriam takes Paul to their cottage. But that does not, though their physical involvement continues for almost a year, but we do not find any improvement in their relationship. And like I said, that she looks upon it as a sacrifice, and this is not done spontaneously on her part. This is realized by Paul. And here at least Paul recognizes the fact that their attempt, that both of them had attempt to be physically intimate with each other, is actually there. This attempt is actually a failure. It is a failure, and therefore he decides to to break off the affair with Miriam yet again, and this time he does it with much pain. And in the meantime he also begins to see Clara Doss. So the physical, although this is the problem in their relationship, that although Miriam, because her love for Paul is so pure, okay, and she really wants to be with Paul, and therefore she also agrees to get physically involved with him, yet she fails to connect with him at that level, and she fails to react or enjoy their physical involvement instinctively, and that is realized by Paul when they are together. He realizes that she is not able to enjoy their intimacy instinctively, which Paul is able to, which means that she is there with him, but then she is not there. So that makes Paul, finally decide to break off their relationship. The next point is the title, the test on Miriam. Like I said, that being a girl from a puritanical background, it is of course a test for Miriam. It is of course a test, a trial for her that she is put to. Okay, so that she and what kind of trial it is? It is a trial where she has to try. She has to make that attempt to meet Paul in a spontaneous manner, to be intimate with him spontaneously, naturally, freely, and involve herself in this experience of physical love. But then we find that although she gets involved with him, but she cannot do it positively, spontaneously, and at the same time she also fails to enjoy their physical intimacy. Like I said, here we find that somewhere Paul feels that there is something that is preventing Miriam from breaking off that barrier between them, and therefore Paul also fails to feel that desire, that joyful desire to marry Miriam and to have her in his life. As far as Paul's attitude towards Miriam is concerned, we find that so far we have seen that Paul's attitude towards Miriam has always been, one of impatience and not of tenderness. And in fact, when on that evening, dusky evening, when Paul gets sexually aroused to an state of intense excitement, they get involved. And when at Miriam's grandmother's cottage, she finds her singing at the piano. She is immediately compared to a nun, and Paul realizes that it is Miriam's spiritual, romantic, let's say, her romantic, religious temperament that only makes her respond to things around her at the spiritual level, and therefore she fails. This spirituality, this spiritual temperament of Miriam doesn't allow her to respond to things around spontaneously, naturally, except at the spiritual level. And therefore, according to Paul, this makes her inadequate as a human being. And then in this chapter, we find that Paul is able, when they get physically intimate, we find that Paul seems to, overcome his self-consciousness at a point, and he is able to connect himself or identify himself with the universe around, with the nature around. And Miriam completely fails to share this state with Paul. And then we find that like I said earlier, that the way she replies, her replies are monosyllabic, and she actually appears to be very, very afraid when they are physically involved. And therefore, although she gives herself to Paul, but that too is in a mood of resignation, because that sense of sacrifice is always there in her mind. That sense of sacrifice is something that predominates in her, and that makes her give herself to Paul in a mood of resignation, as if she has resigned herself to her fate. And so she readily, then not readily actually, and therefore she agrees to be intimate with him. So like I said, this causes revulsion. This makes, since this is realized by Paul that she's not able to enjoy their physical involvement, this sexual intimacy instinctively, spontaneously, therefore it makes him feel disgusted with Miriam. So he finally decides to give up their relationship. And here, now it may appear to us that Paul's treatment of Miriam is kind of cruel, okay, but still there is some justification in it, because Paul is actually being very much honest here as far as his emotions are concerned. So it is this emotional honesty. So if we try to analyze, or if we try to look at Paul's treatment of Miriam, that once he is leaving her, and then again he is coming back to her, again he decides to break off their relationship. So this kind of treatment, although it appears to be cruel, but then it has some justification in it in terms of emotional honesty, because Paul is being very true to his as far he's being very true to his emotions, because he finds himself comfortable and he doesn't want Miriam to take their sexual intimacy, or to consider their sexual intimacy as a sort of sacrifice. So he feels that Miriam is only, capable of this sacrifice, and he doesn't want it. So he is being very, very honest as far as his emotions and his responses are concerned. So from that perspective, it is justified. But then in the final break-off scene, the justification that he gives for their breakup, he claims that he wants them to be separate because that would make Miriam independent. That is not at all justified. That, in fact, this justification rather appears to be quite inadequate. And then if we look at Miriam's state of mind here, Miriam is kind of, she begins to hate herself. Why? Because she feels an intense bondage, and she feels that bondage to Paul, and she hates herself. Why? Because she knows that this is something that is beyond her control, that she could never control. Therefore she hates herself, and she also realizes that their relationship has been has always been a struggle for dominance, where one is trying to dominate the other, and therefore she knows it very well that she can never be that dominant partner. And so she also feels disgusted, she also feels annoyed, and here she makes a very bitter exclamation, and that is very justified. She says that the important line is where she says, "It has been one long battle between us, you fighting away from me." Now what she means to say here is that throughout their relationship, Paul has never, behaved maturely in their relationship. Paul has never made a positive, mature response to their relationship. This is what she means, and that also implies that he has, because these are the emotional demands, in love, and he has failed. So as far as Paul is concerned, Paul has, from Miriam's perspective, Paul has failed to respond in a mature, positive manner to the emotional demands involved in love. But unfortunately, Paul, interprets her words otherwise, and he misunderstands her, because he thinks that she's trying to say that all this time she has been simply playing with him, and he did not play with her. Rather, she's the one who played with him, and in fact there was nothing between them. So this is misunderstood. This exclamation by Miriam is misunderstood by Paul, and he, like I said, after he misunderstands Miriam, he decides to break off. Now here we can say something, that for Paul, he is always inclined to to put the blame on Miriam's shoulder. Why? It is because maybe he doesn't want to acknowledge his own deficiencies. He doesn't want to acknowledge his own inadequacy. So he puts the blame on Miriam instead of acknowledging his deficiency, his own shortcomings as a man, where he fails to fulfill the emotional demands of love. And then maybe in another way, he is trying to keep himself away from the disturbing knowledge that he is still immature, and that he and this appears to be a kind of self-deception, where Paul seems to deceive himself by putting the entire blame on Miriam, making her responsible for the failure of their relationship. And so after breaking off with her, we find that he leaves, and in order to restore his self-esteem, he goes to a pub where he flirts with a group of girls there. But this is very clear that he is but that's again doesn't mean that he is very, very indifferent, because the problem is that it only suggests that since he's immature, he just cannot face the implications of his behavior with the frankness and humility it requires. It would have been everything in their relationship would have been let's say like all the problems in their relationship could have been solved if Paul had dared to acknowledge his shortcomings, if he had accepted his drawbacks and his failures with much humility. So it doesn't mean that, like I said, that he is totally indifferent, but he doesn't want to face it. He simply wants to keep himself away from this disturbing knowledge of his own immaturity, and therefore he leaves Miriam. So with this we come to the end of analysis of this chapter, the test on Miriam. I hope you find the lecture helpful. So if you really like my channel and you find the content comprehensive and helpful at the same time, so please do like my like my videos and share, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Until then, bye bye.